Hello, audioholics. This is Logan, and welcome back to Rolling Drones, the show where we do things and drone on. No, this is the show where we go over the Rolling Stones' top 100 metal albums of all time. And to help me do that, here is Tyler.
Hello, I'm in my bedroom today because I'm lazy as fuck and I didn't feel like getting set up in my usual format.
Okay.
So yeah.
And here is an album that I don't really think belongs here. This is Dream Theater, Images and Words. Why don't you go first?
So, Images and Words. This is an album that I've had a lot of mixed feelings on since the first time I heard it. This was actually my first Dream Theater album, technically. I usually consider Train of Thought my first, but I technically did hear this one first. I I liked it then, but like as I explored Dream Theater's discography more, I realized like I only really enjoyed it because it was the first thing I heard. And as I heard more Dream Theater albums and songs, I realized it kind of isn't as good in any way. I don't understand the love for that album. Like come on, like you're trying to tell me Take the Time and like Surrounded is on the same level as anything off of Octavarium or anything off of 6 Degrees or anything off of Scenes from a Memory. Like, what are you on? You have to be on something serious to think that. Okay, Learning to Live is a fucking fantastic song, okay, and so is Under a Glass Moon, and obviously Pull Me Under is a classic, but the rest of the album, as far as I'm concerned, blows compared to the, like later Dream Theater albums. Even the next Dream Theater album, Awake, every single fucking song on it is better than anything other than probably those two songs, Under a Glass Moon and Learning to Live. And arguably, those two songs aren't even as good as the best songs from Awake, like The Mirror or The Lie or what's the one towards the end of the album that I've always really loved? I forget. Space Divest is another standout track from that album. I could go on and on. I don't think that their or I guess it's not technically their debut album because their debut album was When Dream and Day Unite, but for all intents and purposes, the debut album of Dream Theater is Images and Words, since the first album didn't have Labrie.
Yeah,
This
so
album just isn't as good as the rest of their discography. So just based on that alone, I can't say that I really enjoy listening to it. I would rather listen to almost any Dream Theater album over this one. But judging it on its own, which the reason why I've started by talking about that is because I think it's kind of important to judge the album on its own merits when you're doing a list like this. And so judging it on its own merits, objectively, okay, it's a great album. All right, it's a great album with a lot of diversity. There's a lot of musicality displayed here, a lot of technical aspects to the album that's really good. A lot of catchy melodies. Labrie is really good on this album. Again, I think I prefer him on multiple other albums, specifically Awake. I think he's way better, but he's pretty good here. It's a good album. I would say objectively it's at least a 9 out of 10. But personally, just because I have the context of the rest of the discography of Dream Theater, it can't go any higher than a C for me.
would you put it above or below?
I would put it above.
Okay.
I am more likely to listen to the good songs on this album than the one off of Kveler Talk. Media.
Okay. So I will actually pretty much agree with everything that he said. This is a C album for me. And something else I would like to point out is I kind of realized that I have the same opinion about this that I have about Falling Fallen by Evanescence. And as a result of that, I'm going to do something that I don't think I'm going to be doing very often, and that is actually change my ranking. I'm actually going to make this go up a little bit. So that is my list as it is currently shown. But honestly, I don't really need to say much about this album because he said pretty much my opinions. I just think the biggest issue for me with this album is it's an album that it's the album by Dream Theater that is talked about the most. It is the most mainstream album by far for the band. Like to a point where you could probably like this is like the thing where you could mention Dream Theater, somebody might not know who they are, and you could be like, oh, they're the Pull Me Under band. Like that, I think non-music lovers and non-fans would know this album over any other. And that's an absolute shame because it is by far from their best. Like he said, Awake, Scenes from a Memory, those are two albums that I would recommend going back to or getting into the band over Images and Words. That's how I tried to get into the band, and I almost wrote the entire band off of it because of this sort of subpar performance. I mean, okay, I would even say objectively, this is probably about a 7 out of 10. Because, yeah, okay, fine, it's technical, but a lot of the structure is really shaky. It all just kind of has that sort of 80s hair metal feel to it, almost like arena rock, but not very good arena rock. And that is completely personified in the weakest track on this album, Surrounded. This song is just straight hot garbage. In fact, when Tyler and I were listening to this song, or listening to this album rather, I put on When I See You Smile by Bad English, and it had the exact same opening riff, or the same opening keyboard riff.
It doesn't.
Or it's very similar, I think. It sounds so just. And one thing I will say, this is definitely LaBrie's best performance on any album. But yeah, I think that the entire first half minus Pull Me Under varies from okay to dog shit. And then the entire second half ranges from really good to really fucking good. I mean, the essential tracks for me, obviously Pull Me Under, but also Under a Glass Moon, Waiting for Sleep, Learning to Live. I count that as one song. And also Metropolis Part 1, I would say, even though everything off of Metropolis Part 2 just completely trounces it. Yeah, I have such disdain for this album because I almost wrote the entire band off as a result of this album, and I have a feeling that a lot of other people would as well. It's just kind of too mainstream sound, or not mainstream, it's kind of too just arena rock feeling for a band that would go on to do a lot more good things. And the mix is just so bad. It's so thin. Like, it's funny. I compare Dream Theater to Rush a lot. Well, Rush is also the album that I can immediately think of. They have the only album I can immediately think of that has a mix worse than this. It's so thin. It's like they never heard of the concept of any kind of low end. Like what? Did like James LeBray just fucking eat all of the low end? Like fuck this. So I mean, I like aspects of this album, but yeah, for me, I would still give it a C. So, do you have any other comments before we go, Tyler?
Nope, I'm all good. It's a good album. I don't necessarily agree that the mix is bad. I think the mix is not conducive to the music. I think the mix, it was designed for more of a progressive thing, like Gentle Giant or, you know, that kind of
Okay,
thing.
fuck you. Even Gentle Giant had more low ends than this.
It's not really about, like, I don't agree that there's no low end. It's just that it's not a metal mix. There's not as much focus on thickness with the guitars, and it's more about dynamic range. It's about hearing the bass and the keyboard and the guitar and the drums and the vocals and whatever else they're doing at the time.
Okay, yeah, like I get that. Like Rush, like Neil Peart, especially in like the golden era of Rush, like Permanent Waves, uh, Hemispheres, Farewell to Kings.
I would argue all of those albums are mixed more like metal albums, though.
Well, yeah, but I get what you're saying of like, oh, like, like there's not a lot of distortion in the guitar. And that's something I like about Neil Peart, or about like that mix that Alex Larson, is that his name?
Lifeson.
Lifeson. That Alex Lifeson tone. And I kind of understand where they were going with this, maybe. They were trying to make it sound more like Rush, maybe specifically more like synth era Rush, but even if you like synth era Rush, I think we can all agree that that's the era that was mixed the worst. Like Signals, um, Grace
I don't
Under
know. Presto was
Pressure,
mixed really bad.
Power Windows, Presto specifically, it's mixed like those
Presto wasn't a
albums, and
synth
those
era
albums
album,
aren't
though.
very
That
good.
album, they were kind of like going back to their roots.
What?
Presto wasn't a synth era album, though.
Okay, it wasn't a synth. It was like a transition period, but still, like you get what I mean. It's like the same kind of mix, very low on the low end, very just tinny and awful. It's almost like you're listening to the album over the phone.
Yeah. Anyway, I think we can probably wrap it up now.
All right. Well, I've been Logan. He has been Tyler. Join us next time when we cover Sunbather by Death Heaven. Goodbye, everyone.
Yay. Bye bye.
Yay, black metal. It's your favorite, Tyler.
Uh huh.
Bye.